Today, we become legends.
From one of the highest skill cap gods in the game with an interesting but polarizing design to a milquetoast god with not really much going for her, this is why Old Persephone was a better design than New Persephone. So I'll kick this one off by saying that, to be totally honest, I don't really like the design of Persephone either way, and I think the title of this video is mostly for continuity with the series more so than a strict statement of fact. I think she had some issues in her kit before and still has issues in her kit now, but I'd rather be destroyed by a god with an interesting and skillful design than be destroyed by a god with nothing interesting to speak of and almost no skill required. So the original passive was frustrating to deal with. Investing a lot into killing Persephone was a bit of a fool's errand, as she would just come back and still drop her ult on your entire team and get massive value, even if she literally runs into your team 1v5 and dies. But guess what? They somehow made a worse and more boring passive than that with her new one. This new passive, where all she can do is preemptively place seeds, feels like Hi-Rez's attempt to be like, don't worry guys, we kept the high skill cap because you have to predict where the next fight will be after you died, but this passive just feels utterly useless and extremely clunky. Even the best players in the game won't reliably be able to predict where the next team fight will go down several minutes in advance. The best bet here is to just place them in mid or at Gold Fury or Fire Giant or something to have like a better chance of the fight occurring there, which is just one of the most boring passives of all time in my opinion. I'd rather be able to go for a piss in my respawn window than have to do this shit every time. I would have rather seen something where she gets a different set of abilities after death or something like that still allow her to impact the fight, but not just haha I can still ult you even though I fed my brains out. I will admit that, the old passive had problems as well. But moving on to the 2, which in my opinion was exactly the ability they didn't need to rework, yet they still did. The passive and ult were the main problem, not the 2. This ability was actually one of the coolest and most in-depth abilities in the game, and pretty much single-handedly turned Persephone into an interesting and high-skill god. Creating your garden in an intelligent way and with the foresight that her new passive tries to implement but fails, and then utilising that garden with the different stages of flower growth genuinely took a lot of brainpower, which is more than can be said for her reworked 2. Which just turns her into a generic burst mage with a few extra steps. We already have like 30 generic burst mages, we don't need more of them. I get that they wanted a quicker way to set up for a fight if you didn't manage to plant a garden fast enough, and having 3 seeds all at once does help with that, but then in the same vein they made her new passive that is trying to promote foresight while they reworked her 2 to remove any foresight required. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. The single stage plants are also just straight up less interesting than the 2 stages beforehand. Choosing between the middle stage and the final stage was a genuine choice with merits on both sides. The second stage was of course a lot faster, both in terms of how fast it grows and how fast the damage comes out, and was great for when you're being dived or need close range fast damage. But then you could also try and set up the full stage plants, especially if you had a bit more time before the team fight or you were in lane, for more damage and from much greater range as well. Whereas now she just mindlessly presses 2, waits 4 seconds, then sends all 3 forward as a generic burst mage ability with a 4-second delay, or uses her dash to instantly grow them. It's just way less interesting, and it still perplexes me why they reworked the 2 but not the ultimate, which was a much bigger problem in terms of her frustration factor, which is something they specifically mentioned in the rework philosophy. There was also the cool tech that you could do involving firing a basic attack and retroactively planting a seed right in the path of the basic to instantly proc the seed and heal. She just had a lot more skillful and interesting stuff before this change to her 2, and it's a major reason why this video's title rings true for so many in the community, including me. Speaking of the ult though, I feel like this is really the heart of how Hi-Rez designed this rework and how they think about the game in general. They didn't rework the brain dead ability that you can literally miss and still get great value, but they did rework the huge brain 2 that actually made the god unique and interesting and turned it into a generic burst ability. I'm gonna say it right here, why on earth does this ability still reward you for missing it completely? Sure, they made it only 3 basics if you hit the wall, not 5, but this really does just show their philosophy when it comes to the Persephone rework, making her less skillful and more generic because she was hard to balance and had bad win rates beforehand. Hi-Rez, this game has over 120 gods. It's okay if some of them take a lot of skill and don't have insane win rates at every level of play. Not every god needs to be basic enough so your 95-year-old nan could play them, and not every god has to have exactly a 50% win rate at all ranks across all modes. It's okay to have outliers that take more brain power and might have a lower average win rate because of that. This rework basically took away her main interesting ability in the 2 and made it more generic while retaining her ultimate, the main source of frustration in my opinion. Well, aside from her old passive, which to their credit they did change, but they changed it so it's just as terribly designed now but in a different way. But anyway, I know this video was a bit all over the place and less conclusive than my previous 2 videos on why Nuar and Nox were better in their old forms, and that's because there are aspects of this rework that I liked, like her 1 not quite having such insane range change and the passive being changed. But the aspects that I didn't like massively outweigh those that I did, like the new passive being utterly useless and boring and barely an improvement, the ult barely being touched when it needed a full rework, and one of the coolest abilities in Smite beforehand being made into a generic burst mage ability with no thought required. But what do you guys think about the Persephone rework? Do you agree with me that Old Persephone was mostly a better design than new Persephone, or was the rework a good change that made her less frustrating, even if it was at the cost of being less interesting as well? Drop a comment down below and I will catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.